It is just a huge honor for me today to be podcast interviewing Dr. Irving Chao, mentor of mine, a legend to me. My gosh, it's an honor. In fact, I don't even want to read a bio on you. I usually read a bio,
Oh my
but
goodness.
you're such a unique individual. I wanted you to give your own bio.
Well, thank you, Howard. I have learned so much in the last year in your practice about myself and about these young doctors I like to mentor. So a little bit about me. I went to dental school in San Francisco, started off at a DSO, and didn't have the best experience there as far as a new grad dentist. It was actually quite rough and not fun. So when I started my own practice, I wanted to be different. I wanted to really make a positive impact on the dentists that worked for me, and really wanted to give them the support that they needed to become successful. And so I've been having a lot of fun with it. I have 8 new grad associates now, and it's been a blast. So that's my passion. I love to mentor, and it's a really rewarding experience.
Well, that's what you and I have in common. We both have loved mentoring dentists and sharing everything. Now, I learned it all from my father, who was in the restaurant business. Where did you learn it? Was it nature, nurture?
No. So funny story. We were just talking about this before. I actually had an appointment with you, or you had an appointment with me right before this. But I actually hired my associate, my first one, out of necessity. I fell while, this is embarrassing, while dancing. I didn't quite land a lift, and I landed on my face and I broke my wrist. And so at the time, I had just bought my first practice, and it was really scary because I had these big loans. And so I was kind of forced to hire an associate because I couldn't physically work.
So what year did you get out of dental school, and what year did you start self-employment? I mean, how long were you an employee before you took
Yeah,
the plunge?
that's a great question. So I graduated in '09, and it was right around I guess, the housing crash of 2008. And so the only places that were hiring were the big DSOs. And so I started my practice about 5 years later. I signed a 3-year contract with the DSO, and then I worked as an associate in private practice, which I thought would be a whole world of a difference, but it wasn't. And the doctor kind of just had made all these empty promises, and was with him for a couple of years before I started my own practice in 2014.
So can you mention the DSO's name, or do you rather not?
I don't think I can.
It's Dentistry Uncensored. Because I know the one you worked for,
Yeah.
and it's and we talked about this before. Like,
Yeah.
like people always ask me, "Are you for or against DSOs?" And it's like, well, I'm neutral. I mean, it's like you answered it best. What was your answer?
I think as long as you have an efficient business that takes care of patients well and staff members at the same time being profitable, then it's a win-win situation. But when you lead by fear and you pressure patients into things that they don't understand or want, then I don't think that's a successful practice. It could be either a private practice or DSO. I've seen good ones and bad ones of both. So I agree with you. I think I'm neutral on that.
You know, dentists on Dental Town, there's so many who hate DSOs, but I'm always like, the dentists do it on Dental Town for dentistry, and politicians do it all day long. They're always taking away your options. And it's like, there's 2 million dentists on earth. I know a lady here that works for what does she work for? Pacific Dental.
Yes.
And she just had a kid and got divorced, and so she's a single mom with a kid. She does not want to own her own practice. She loves Pacific Dental, and she loves the founder, and it's like, why would you want to ban DSOs and take away her option? It's market segmentation, you know.
Yeah, so I have been actually quite impressed with some of the DSOs, especially Pacific Dental in Arizona. They have a fantastic training facility where they're training all their new doctors and business team, and the amount of support that they're able to provide their owner doctors is amazing. I have a really close friend that works for Pacific Dental here in Arizona, and we were talking. You always think the grass is greener on the other side. It's like, oh yeah, if I had my own practice, I can make all the decisions and do whatever I want. But I told him, you're going to be working, when you open your own practice, you're going to be working 7 days a week, nonstop. You're going to be in charge of hiring, firing, and it's a lot of work. Whereas Pacific Dental or these big DSOs provide all that support. So I told him to give it a second thought before he left his job and opened his own practice.
And my bias towards DSOs, like Pacific was Steve Thorne. That was 613. But people badmouth something like that. And it's like, well, I know the founder of Heartland, Rick Workman. He's just a great guy. I mean, Steve Thorne. I mean, how could you be a greater guy than Steve Thorne? I mean, guys, last time he went on a some African dental charity mission.
Exactly.
His wife adopted 2 kids over there. I mean, he's like an all-American boy. Then people just throw like an entire organization under bus. Is like if they got thousands of employees who are happy, which you measure by employee turnover.
Yes.
And I always thought it's, if Walgreens couldn't keep any of their pharmacists, wouldn't you think something was wrong? So if a DSO can't keep their doctors, there's something incredibly wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But people are big into generalizations. But so these kids come out of school. When they come out of school, where do you think their mind is today? Like these 8 that you just got, where was their mind when they walked out of school?
I really think that, well, especially with this new younger generation, Generation Z, dentists coming out of dental schools now were born in the 2000s. Believe it or not.
Gosh.
Yeah.
Crazy.
So I think they really they don't want to practice by themselves. They want a mentor. They want to be in a group setting where they can run ideas and treatment plans with other doctors. They want to learn and grow together. So that's something that they're looking for. And frankly, I'm competing when I'm hiring these new doctors. I'm competing with the DSOs that are making all these big promises, right? They have CE allowances. They have their university. They have ownership opportunities, right? So when I place my ad out on there, I'm looking at what the DSOs are doing too. Sign-on bonuses. Unfortunately, these days, these are things that we will need to offer these young associates in order to bring them on board.
Well, as far as the ownership, though, everyone I've read so far is still, I don't want to call it a scam, but it's a scam. It's like, and it wasn't me who said it. It was Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger who said when anybody ever mentions EBITDA,
Mm-hmm.
EBI, earnings before interest, depreciation, taxes, depreciation, amortization, they're a con artist.
Mm-hmm.
They're fraud. I mean, if you're going to say earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization, why don't you go ahead and add labor, rent, mortgage, utilities, plumbing, FICA matching? I mean, it's not free cash flow because interest on debt is a real expense, depreciation, amortization.
It's hard.
But when you own something that's not publicly traded,
Mm-hmm.
and you're a minority position, I've seen it for 35 years, you have nothing.
Mm-hmm.
If I own 51%, you own 49%, you are nothing until I do something. Now, if I own 49% of Walmart, I could sell the shares today, on NASDAQ. But so when you own 5% of a dental office that's not publicly traded, unless the terms of, how are we going to figure the price? And it'll be 4 times EBITDA. Is it going to be, what is the formula but anyway, I
have found now, like, a lot of my doctors really don't want the stress of running a practice. But what I do for my doctors is I just do profit sharing, and they love it. They don't have the stress of owning a practice or getting a big loan. So I just set aside a certain percentage of my profits each month, and they get a piece of that pie as long as they stay with the practice. And that has been a good retention tool for me in keeping them on.
And I learned one massive business thing from Don King. Do you remember Don King?
Mm-hmm.
the boxer guy with the big hair, and no one could figure out why he always got the boxers. And the business people, the New Yorkers, the business people, they'd go in there with 20-page contract, and he was going to make far more million. Don King would walk in there with a paper bag of cash, and they took the cash around. I remember for the first couple of years, every time I wrote a bonus check, it was like no one would say thank you. I think, well, that's weird. You know, even, and then I switched it to cash and gave them in person, and they're all crazy.
Exactly.
Yeah. So,
In our
people are
practice,
humans.
yes, another thing is everyone has a different language of appreciation. So one thing that we do in our practice is we give these assessments out to all of our doctors. So some doctors like, words of affirmation, or others like gifts, right? Or others like quality time. So we
It's
really
5 love languages.
exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
So not everyone. You would think that people just want like cash, but that's not always the case. Some people want to be recognized for the hard work that they've done. Some people want to just go out for an outing, like a team building event, and spend quality time with their team members. So I have found that to be effective and
So
keeping people
we're
happy.
always told in the media, like you brought up Generation Z,
Yes.
that there's differences in all these generations.
Yes.
And when I was coming out, I went to dental school in '84, and the provost was telling the deans of all the med school, dental schools that you got to get some girls in there. We can't graduate all boys. And if you don't get, I think, 20 girls in the class, he was going to fire the dean.
Oh my
So on the first day of school, they actually went into the hygiene department and asked any of the hygiene girls on their first day of school if they wanted to move to dental. And but anyway, I was told my whole life how it was all going to change because girls are so different than boys. And the only thing I've noticed after graduating from UMKC in '87 that all the girls in the class noticeably had bigger dental offices and made more money. I mean, they were more likely to have the $1.5 million practice
Yeah.
taking home $400,000 a year
Yeah.
than the guys. They were really an aggressive bunch. But I didn't see how it changed dentistry. But now we hear Generation Z, they just want to be an employee. They don't want to be an owner. How much of that is urban myth? Are they different than you? And are you different than me? This is because these generation gaps.
I think they've seen how hard their parents work and how much they've sacrificed in their personal life to their work. And I don't think they want the same thing. I think they want to go on vacation, try out the newest fab restaurant in the area. They want their free time. They don't even want to work 5 days a week. Like my new doctors, they only want to work 4 days a week, and they want princess hours too.
Princess hours?
Yeah, none of this like late night or
Yeah.
early. They don't want to work weekends. I think they really value their time, and they set boundaries, like work-life balance boundaries, which I think I really admire. Yeah, so
When I was in Japan, which had the lowest birth rate falling, I mean, every woman dentist there told me the same story. She goes, my dad, is all stressed out in grammar school that you wouldn't get in the right high school, all stressed out in high school's room because you wouldn't get in the right college, and then you wanted to get a job at Honda, then you worked 12 hours a day, 7 days a week until you died of alcoholism at 60.
mm-hmm.
And she goes, my whole childhood, I said, I'm not having any kids. I'm not trying to work at Honda. I'm gonna work, and she had it down to like 3 days a week.
Yeah.
And she said, when you work 3 days a week in Japan and you're not married and you don't have a kid, they almost think you're a communist or something like. And so the pendulum swings.
I think so, yeah. And I don't know, like in my class, we actually had more females than males, and I think that's pretty common now in the dental schools.
That was UOP.
Yeah, UOP.
Well, I grew up in Kansas, so I was thinking the most progressive is anything, California to the East Coast.
Sure.
I mean, and then it gets to Kansas about 2 generations later.
Yeah.
And
They even have, like, at UOP now, they have a clinical psychologist that the students have to talk to make sure that they have what they need. And this new generation really values their health, their mental health and their physical health. It's funny, like I was just in the lunchroom the other day, and my associates were all talking about, have you guys been to the new cycle bar? And, I had a breakthrough recently with my therapist. like they are really they put a lot of importance on their health, mental, social,
I can't tell you.
physical.
Peter Altura, on the podcast doctor on longevity or things like that. He's one of several six older physicians role models that I've learned that they said going back if they had to do it all over again, they wish they would have got started seeing a therapist real early before there was any just to understand their mind
Yeah.
and how he's very bummed that he waited till 40 to start. And then he realized that because super successful people a lot of times have issues, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And he said it took him 5 years to figure himself out, and I thought it was very interesting what he did, what his therapist doing is, when you're driving and your thoughts are going, and and he says if you feel stressed, he would write down his thought pattern. So he started journaling his thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And his mind's ever lost in something, he'd just write it down, but he started collecting them. And he was giving them to his therapist. And after doing that for, I think he said it was 6 months, his therapist said, "You don't get it, and he figured himself out. And he's like, I'm an MD. Why did I wait till I was 40 to figure out how my own brain worked?" And I always think that is that lost all my respect for the U.S. military. I mean, if Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, and Afghanistan wasn't enough, but to see all these vets come back, and I'm down there at that Brighter Way charity deal,
Yes.
and they don't get any psychiatric coverage or dental, and most of their teeth were knocked out by shrapnel. It's like, so this is your soldier. I mean, and you don't cover his PTSD and his missing teeth from shot. I mean,
Horrible.
how sinister do you have to be to look at that institution and think that's just gross?
It's so important. I think it's as dentists, our profession is very taxing, not just physically but mentally, right? You're wearing multiple hats. You're the HR department. Sometimes you do accounting. And then you deal with complaints, right? And you're bent over all day over the patient's mouth. I think it's really important that we take good care of ourselves, not just to, it's to protect how long you can last, right? I'm sure dentists that had to retire early, not by choice, but because they just couldn't handle it anymore, either physically or mentally. But I think it's really important to talk about mental health in dentistry. We get excited about all these new CEs and the latest and greatest equipment, but no one talks too much about mental health and the struggles that we face, I think.
I'm going to go back to what we were saying about the Generation Z. I'm a boomer. What are you?
I'm a millennial.
You're a millennial?
Yeah.
Kyle, what are you? You're a millennial too? So, and now they're Generation Z.
Uh-huh.
So I know I read studies from reputable places that they said they can't find any scientific thing for all these breaks, and it's all more urban legend. But one of the things that you did talk about, where they don't want to work 7 days a week and die of alcoholism at Toyota or Honda.
No,
they're not going to do that. And my parents had 7 kids, and I thought I really cut back, but I only have 4. And now my 4 kids, only one had 4. 2 had 2, and 1 said, "No, I'm going to pass." And so 8 divided by 4, it's kind of 2 average from. So I see that coming deal, but sometimes that quality of life, a lot of older dentists like me think, well, they're lazy, and it's not. It's just a different way of seeing it. But one of the things I always have the hardest thing reaching them is, I got to push them out of their comfort zone to do their first molar root canal or place their first implant. And then they always sit there and say, well, treat other people like you want to be treated. And if this was me, I'd want an endodontist to do it. And I'd say, so the endodontist didn't do his first molar root canal. He was born, he had 30 under his belt, neonatal. I mean, you got to do your first, and your first is your worst. I read one study of a dentist's first 10 implants. I mean, the failure rate's 60, 70, 80%. I think at 5 years. I mean, obviously your first 10 implants aren't going to be like your oral surgeon who's done 10,000.
Sure.
But so how do you navigate a person who's Work-life balance isn't trying to be real aggressive in work and productivity and everything, but to push them and say, no, you've been an employee, maybe you need to start your own, or come on, you got to do a molar root canal, placing your own implant. I mean, a maxillary second bicuspid. I mean, what's going to go wrong?
Yeah.
And like an ortho case. Well, if it's an adult class 1 molar, class 1 canine, non-growing adult, you don't even need a panoseph. I mean, nothing's moving. So how do you push them out of their comfort zone? But you don't want them to walk out of dental school and try an all on 4 and end up, in jail.
I think what I do is I make my expectations really clear. So I tell my associates, okay, my new grad associates, let's get really good at fundamental dentistry, right? And then we can explore your interests after that first year, and I can support you and send you to the courses necessary for you to be competent. I think the nice thing about being in a group setting is, like, I have associates that are excellent at endo or excellent at implant surgery, and they get motivated by watching them. Like, I was like, yeah, this Dr. Hashimoto was where you were at a year ago. Now he's placing implants almost every day. And look how well, and look at the lives that he's able to change. You almost have to like tell them a story to motivate them. And you have to encourage them with baby steps, right? When they do their first premolar endo, right? You're, oh my gosh, look how good it is. I'm so proud of you. And then you encourage them, and then you build their confidence. And then what I tell them, like, I'm here for you. If you get stuck, I will be here to support you and to bail you out. So I think that's a big thing. And I think knowing that I'm there to help them and support them it comes a long way.
So yeah, you want to push them out of their comfort zone. We're talking about, the difference in the generations. I always thought there were 2 types of dentists. There was the blood and guts who loved, because the big money is determined by insurance company. I mean, if I spend an hour doing a cleaning, they might only give me $100.
Mm-hmm.
But if I spend the same hour pulling 4 wisdom teeth, I'm gonna get $1,000.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a lot easier to pull 4 wisdom teeth than it is to do an hour-long cleaning exam and bite wings. And it seems like the big money spot is you get a toothache. You either extract it, bone graft, and place an implant, extract the tooth, do an implant and a crown, or you do a root canal billet and crown.
Sure.
And if you have those 2 money tickets in your back pocket, man, that can get you out of cancel to the point your schedule can fall apart. And that's why we don't pay hygienists on production, because if you're a hygienist, you have 4 appointments in the morning and 4 in the afternoon, and all 4 of your morning cancel, and you're paid 40% of production. Man, you're out, and you can't make it up. But if you're a dentist, your whole morning could cancel. In the afternoon, you can have a toothache, root canal, billet, and crown. There's $2,500, and then the next one might be extraction, 3-unit bridge, and you can have 2 patients and have a record day.
The good news is that I can tell you these new grad doctors are coming out with tremendous student loans, so they are motivated to produce. They have to, or else they won't survive. And I only hire new grad doctors that have a good amount of student loans because they want to work, and they're motivated to do dentistry.
And I did one step further out here in Arizona. Phoenix, I don't know if you know that it's Mesa and Gilbert are called South Utah. I mean, there's not one person in Mesa or Gilbert that doesn't know someone in Salt Lake City. But my God, if they got a stay-home wife with 2 kids, that's modern-day slavery. They'll get there an hour early, work through lunch. They could be walking out the door and say, I got a toothache. They just turn around.
Yeah.
But a single guy, no student loans, dad paid for college, and they're always trying to leave early. I had a really good-looking associate. He was hot as hell. The girl assistants loved him and everything. He did everything to get out of work. He always wanted to leave early. Which was good for the other associates. They're like, and he's like, anybody want my crown or whatever? Like,
yeah.
Oh, yeah. But oh my God, you get a Mormon with a stay-home wife who's got 3 kids and they got $500,000 of student loans. Oh my God, that's the most motivated person. And in economics, that's another thing. The number one long-term economic productivity growth you can get is two people get married and have a kid, because they're going to walk into a 30-year house. They're going to buy X dollars of baby stuff. I mean, they just go through the checkbook, say, this guy, these people are going to work for 3 decades because they made this one decision.
Yes.
So if they don't have student loans, if they don't have a kid,
Yeah.
But do you agree? I mean, would you look at all the young dentists out there and say, oh, there's two, there's the blood and guts, but do you believe that to be in the profit zone, you really need to be either blood and guts, where they take a toothache and turn it into an extraction implant crown or a root canal built-in crown, or if you're not blood and guts, I call it the white and fluffy. They do the Invisalign, the veneers, the bleaching, bonding, veneers, ortho, Invisalign. I mean, it seems like when I see 2 dentists crushing it, one's placing an implant every other day or doing molar endo they're doing molar endo and implants, and the other person's starting an Invisalign case every 3 or 4 days. And because do you think those are the 2 big sweet spots? Because those are 2, the cosmetic, you can price whatever you want. It's the fee's not in insurance. Yeah. And the other one, the insurance just they overpay for root canals and extractions.
So I agree with that. And I think part of my doctor onboarding, I have a recruiting pamphlet that I just made. And in my pamphlet, it talks about the tracks that you can take. And it's split up into 2. Do you want to be the cosmetic, big restorative, ortho track? Or do you want to do endo implant surgery track? And I have kind of courses for both that I can send them to nurture these interests.
Is that the 2 main tracks?
Yeah.
Cosmetic or surgery?
Yeah. Because, I mean, exactly, you're not going to make money doing those fillings or a crown here or there. You have to have bigger cases. And something I've learned at today's dental is, the associates, I started that practice. I started with an associate even before I got my Arizona dental license. And one thing I learned is they have to be producing, if they're only producing $3,000 a day, you're only going to break even. You're not going to make any profits. And I learned a lot about my break even point with an associate run practice. For me here, it's about $120,000 per month that they have to produce to break even. And then when I had 2 associates here at today's dental, it was $150,000. So to make any profit, you have to be over that, which is a lot of dentistry. And you can only do that with bigger cases and implants.
Yeah, I went down, when I got here, the relationship with Delta Dental was very functional, and they had a lot of dentists on the board, and Ed Judd was down there, and I used to go down there with my accountant, and I'd show him all my overhead, and I'd say, Ed, I'm losing money because you underpay me on a cleaning, exam, and x-ray. And these hygienists back then, I remember, what are hygienists now in hourly in Arizona? Almost 50? Yeah. And
in California, it's 70 to 80.
Yeah, and I was saying, crazy. I don't need $1,000 to pop out 4 wisdom teeth. I just have 4 carpals, anesthetics, an elevator, no lab bill. I said, you overpay me on wisdom teeth and root canals and crowns, but I wanted to build a big hygiene department, and I'm stopping at 2. I could go to 3 or 4 or whatever, but my hygienists lose money. And everybody says, I got a really profitable hygiene department. I always say, okay, well, when you do a cleaning, exam, and x-ray, do you make $9.17 after taxes, or do you lose $9? And they never know the answer. They can never show me the answer, but they always know it's profitable. It's well, you shouldn't know how much you weigh unless you can see a scale. And that was the one thing. That was my journey with Lori. When I hired Lori, who's the president of the company now, she was a $12 an hour bookkeeper before she came to me. And I told her, I said, I'm using a CPA, and all this idiot does is tells me my tax situation. It's almost like he works for the government. All he gives me is my tax information. I said, I don't want an accountant just for taxes. I want managerial economics. I want to know where I'm in the profit zone. I said, I just want you to tell me how much I net after taxes for every procedure I do. It took her 2 years to set up the systems, and we tried all these different things. Like one of the simple ways, just take all costs divided by operatory hours. We stole that from Southwest Airlines.
Okay.
So Herb Kelleher figured out that all the other hub and spoke systems, United and Delta and all that stuff, their planes are in the sky for 8 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
And, they fly, everybody gets them. And so he just went back and forth. But he got his planes up to 12 hours a day. He said that was the number one metric to just track is, everybody's got the same $50 million Boeing. Just how many hours is yours working? If yours working 8, mine's working 12. So 4 hours more. And then seat miles. He reduced every seat to seat miles. So we reduced every cost to an operatory hour. And then you start realizing there's 168 hours in a week. That $1 million facility sits idle 80% of the hours.
So I think that's why a lot of these, practices are starting to open, like 7 to 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., right? Monday through Saturday. Because when your practice sits idle, our fixed costs are all the same, right? You're going to be more profitable when you use it around the clock. I have had problems having staff work those earlier or later hours, but some people really like it, like where they work like 6 hours straight, like a 7 to 1 or 1 to 7 shift. But I've had difficulties hiring for that.
I personally, and I always told my physician, I always worried I had diabetes or something. And I'm still real low, but my whole life, whenever I eat lunch, I get a food coma. I mean, if I go have Mexican macayos for lunch, I don't want to come back to a root canal. I want to come home and take a nap.
Mm-hmm.
So I used to hate lunches because for me, eating lunch was like sneaking in the bathroom and taking heroin or something. I mean, I just want to crawl up in a ball and take a nap. So I don't like lunches at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I still have that issue. And I guess you just have it or don't. But when I talk to young dentists and when I see them posting on Dental Town,
mm-hmm.
or it could be Facebook, Twitter, whatever. One of the things the young dentists, they always feel like the staff's out to get them, the office manager's out to get them, everybody's out to get them. And I'm always reading these deals saying, okay, is this just a young, sensitive snowflake who doesn't, maybe she's an only child and she doesn't get out much, or do you think there's just a massive amount of toxicity in the hundreds of thousands of dental offices across the United States?
I think this younger generation probably is a little bit more sensitive, and you have to be careful of how you approach them and how you speak to them. I think they really like positive affirmation. So I always like to start with like things that they're doing well. And then I say, okay, well, but and we have these opportunities, right? Like, tell me about the situation. How could we have made this situation better? Right? So I try to problem solve with them, not saying you did this wrong, you screwed up on this, but how can we do this better? I care about you and I want you to learn and grow and become more successful. So how can we do this differently next time, right? Or how could you have approached this person differently to get a better outcome, right? Let's talk about it. So I think they definitely are more sensitive, and there's all these there's Black Lives Matters and there's all these like women movements. And I think it's great. I think this is much long overdue, where people are expressing how they feel and how things, impact them. So I think they are more aware because they're on their social media and everyone's expressing their opinion, right? So I think we do need to be more these people are more sensitive, and we have to approach them differently. They don't respond well when you're very direct and you don't give them praise. I know that for sure. They just shut down.
I a lot of like my mom's always saying, what's wrong? All these people are, what she says, being more weird, or they're admitting all this weird stuff or whatever. And I always tell her, I said, well, when all the teachers said that you had to write with your right hand, only left-handers are only 2%.
Mm-hmm.
But when the teachers got off their case, it immediately went to 10% around the world.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a 5-fold increase so people really live under the effects. I mean, if everybody in your country is this religion or this eats this food or only celebrates this, I mean, it's hard to celebrate, an Indian holiday in Phoenix. But it's amazing when you get out of people's way, they get to be themselves. They get to blossom.
Yeah.
How would I just think that communication is one of the most important things.
Absolutely.
And you see these people and like let's take lawsuits. Every time I've read this, and let's say Dental Town's been out since '98, and it's 2023. I mean, I haven't seen anything new on Dental Town in 10 years because the people are all the same. And every time a patient threatens, well, if you don't give me my money back or you don't do that, I'm going to sue you. They get on Dental Town, and the first thing everybody does is tell them to call the board. You know what I mean? Or call their attorney, call their malpractice association. And I just think, my God, that's so bizarre. I never got sued. And when someone said that this patient said they're going to sue you, well, what was my first phone call to? The patient.
Yeah.
Irving.
Yeah.
Howard. Mary Lou up front just said that you're upset. What happened? And one guy, I'll tell you, this is so funny. Right down the street from the first turn in to the middle of that retirement center, I called lady and said, well, he won't talk to you. In fact, he says he wants to punch you in the nose. And I said, okay, well, I'm done with work. I don't care if he punches me in the nose. I won't punch back, but he's right on the way home. Can I just stop by? And she goes, I really wish you would. I said, I'll tell you what, I'll just pull out in front. I'll just honk a couple times. Maybe we'll come out. He came out. He was so mad. But anyway, when we were done, we were hugging, laughing, telling jokes and everything. And I just don't know why, if you really think the office manager is out to get you, why don't you take her to lunch? Why don't you go just say what's wrong?
Yeah.
If someone says they're going to sue you, why would you call an attorney? You think an attorney wants to build his practice or shrink his practice? And then, of course, the other one is money. They got $500,000 of student loans, and they're afraid to present a $10,000 treatment plan to you. I mean, it's not my fault that you have 16 cavities and came in holding a Mountain Dew.
Sure.
I mean, how come some people, almost like a sociopath, can just say you have 16 cavities and you need a $10,000 treatment plan, and I mean, that's what I would want for my teeth. That's what I want for your teeth. But they can't talk to their staff. They can't talk to upset patients. They can't talk money. How do you nurture coming out of your shell and communicating?
Sure.
These tough conversations.
Yeah. So Howard, I'm glad you asked that. So part of my onboarding with my new doctors is role playing every one of these situations. So we role play a lot with upset. I love to pretend to be an upset patient that's threatening to sue or to go to the dental board. And I want to see, how they can, bring me down and talk to me as a person, right? What expectations were not met. So we role play that conversation. We role play, difficult interactions with staff members or coworkers. These are all things we practice. And we have regular weekly and monthly staff meetings where we practice with each other. Like we'll say, Donna, when you said this last week, it made me think this. It was very hurtful. And what I want to, we work together. I want to move forward on this. How could we have done this differently? Or these are all things that we role play. It's funny when I'm known for, whenever we have a staff meeting, they're all like, oh, Dr. Chao, we know what he's going to do. He's going to want to role play, because that's going to prepare them for these difficult conversations. Because it's going to happen no matter, a patient is bound to get upset, right? The more procedures you do, the more specialty procedures you do, the more can go wrong as well. So these are all conversations that we practice over and over again. So that's what has been helpful to me and my new associates, talking to each other and with patients.
And it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And like the breaker file, everybody knows their car breaks down 200,000 miles. Your refrigerator doesn't, nothing lasts forever. And it's amazing how some of the stuff you buy doesn't even last 2 or 3 years. I mean, I can't believe that all the stuff I bought in my house that didn't even last a year. Like I just had to replace a weed eater. You mean a weed eater doesn't last a year when your yard is the size of less than a tennis court?
And I mean, Howard, I didn't used to be this patient. I've been sued multiple times by multiple patients, and I've had board cases. So I share all these experiences with my new grad associates. And I said, I wish I would have done this differently, learn from my mistakes. Like if I had just called the patient and apologized, right? Or brought them in or wrote off their balance, all of this could have been avoided, right? Because once things go to the dental board, it takes forever, one. And then lawyers are extremely expensive. I spent almost $100,000 in attorney fees on a board case before. So it's like I truly like I present. It's like a case study. I present this case. I have all my kind of board documents up on the screen, and I tell my new associates, let's go through this together, right?
And that's what everyone loves about you. My favorite prosthodontist in the world. Oh my gosh, what was his name? His last job was in Arkansas at Green Laboratory. My gosh, I forgot his name. He always lectured with Carl Misch, but it was so neat because he would give this lecture. Everybody else, especially if you're a lecturer, I would see cosmetic dentists showing the same 3 cases for 20 years on the circuit.
Sure.
And then later find out that wasn't even his case. It was his partner's case. It came out in a lawsuit or whatever. And this guy would get up and show every one of his failures. Mm-hmm. And I thought, and it made everyone feel better because, by the end of the day, you're like, oh, I did that. I'm not a prosthodontist, but it was just so great. Everybody loved him because he would admit his mistakes. And I always tell my boys, it's not a mistake. If you learn something,
exactly.
It's just a lesson.
There is so much growth that comes out of being vulnerable and admitting your mistakes versus just sharing like your successes, right? I think in my own career, I've learned the most when I, have made a mistake or, had a lawsuit or a dental board case. So you can't have growth unless you have struggle, right? So these are all things that I share with my associates. I'm like an open book, and they all know I like to tell my stories, but it's just so powerful. And I encourage them to share their failures too. So once a month we meet and the doctors meet together and we all share a case that, didn't go so well. And let's all learn from this, like so that we don't make the same mistake over and over again.
If you go to my lecture, I only show cases where the patient actually died. And I said, you still didn't answer my question. Where did you learn this? Nature, nurture? I mean, you're an extreme. I mean, you got 8. You just mentored 8 associates straight out of school. You're majorly. You got to be in the top. It's not just 1%, but the top 0.1%.
I don't think of it. I think of it as like I have so much more to learn. It's funny, like
Were you the first dentist in your family?
I am, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. But when you go, like I'm a scheduling institute client.
Yeah.
And they have these different groups, right, for different doctors, depending on where you are in your career, right? Are you a $1 million practice? Are you a $3 million practice? Are you a $5+ million practice, right? And I started in the low group. And as I kind of went up to this group, and then now I'm, in the, I don't know what is $5, $6, $7 million plus practices. You learn so much from the dentists there. And it's so impressive what some of these doctors are doing. Some of these doctors have like big training centers where they're just, feeding, they're training all these new doctors and feeding their practices. So it's amazing. I don't feel, if anything, I feel like I have so much more to learn and to grow. And I'm having a good time.
So I've done Jay Geyer. He was the founder of
yes.
I did him 198 and 1504. I don't get any kickbacks or anything plugging anybody, and plus I'm retired. I just do this for fun. And I think I think what Jay Geyer's done is just amazing.
Yeah.
I'm sure Jay would love it if we if we give him a plug. I mean, it's amazing. But and then we'll end on that note. What's your Jay Geyer plug? Would you recommend the Scheduling Institute, or do you no longer? Or?
No, absolutely. I've been with them for a couple years, and it's so how his program works is every quarter they come into your practice, and then it's a different topic, but they also have at the same time motivational trainings for the owner doctors. So once a quarter we go and meet at their training center, either in Phoenix or in Atlanta, Georgia. And it's like they every quarter I need a boost. I need some motivation to lead my team. And he is tremendous at doing that. And he has programs, he has classes for every position in the office, like treatment coordinators, receptionists, associate dentists. They have a tremendous program, and I've seen tremendous growth from
you go down to the facility. He's got a facility in Atlanta and Phoenix. Do you ever go down to the Phoenix facility?
Yes, all the time.
Yeah.
And because I have a practice in Phoenix, he allows me to use that facility as a training center for my team. So my team at Today's Dental has been to the facility in Phoenix for free. He just lets me use it.
The only thing I regret about Jay Geyer is my buddy up the street, like 3 miles down the street, Dr. Tom Manor, he told me for 6-7 years, you got to do this, Jay Geyer. And I didn't. I finally did. Then one day I tried to figure out how much money I probably lost waiting 6 or 7 years. But I mean, I know you go to dental school to fix broken teeth. I get it. I mean, we work with our hands, and figuring out the business, the marketing, the new patients. It's not what everybody does, but what I would say, the other thing about you're saying about Jay Geyer is you're in this clubs, the 1 million, the 3 million, the 5+ million. It was the same thing with me getting my FAGD and my MAGD.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed that every time I took a course in Phoenix, it was the same 100 people.
Mm-hmm.
And then I noticed I had these letters after their names. I finally joined the AGD, but when I look back, it's like when I went through the Mission Institute, it was 7 3-day weekends in Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
And I look back and say, okay, I learned this much from Carl Misch, who was just my favorite implantologist of all time.
Mm-hmm.
But I learned this much from spending 7 3-day weekends with these guys, including we all went to a Kiss concert one night.
Oh, that's great.
And then they turned into lifelong relationships. And I look at the AGD, and the AGD, when I started, I was just wanting to do fillings and crowns and this. And I actually got mad at the AGD guy. I said, will they get my FAGD? I'm not going to do ortho.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do implant. Why do I, why? And he said, because that's what the dentist that went before you decided. Just shut up and do it. And then to get my AGD implant requirements, the only thing I could find, because there were no dental schools at that time, was to go to that stupid Mission Institute for 7 3-day weekends. Well, that changed my entire life.
Yeah.
And then ortho, I had to do, all these ortho classes.
Sure.
And let's wrap up that and come back and talk again.
Sure.